Hi, Mike English here again, making another video where I don't show my face because I feel weird about showing my face. This is to talk about an issue that I run into a lot where people say some version of, well, we have enough homes approved in the pipeline to meet the county's housing needs or the DC region's housing needs, or we have enough zone capacity in Silver Spring and Bethesda and what have you to get all the homes we need. It's not really true, but we'll get to that. So why do you want to change my single family home only neighborhood and can't you just leave it alone? So trying to consolidate some of the arguments here in this presentation. Why, quote, there are enough homes in the pipeline, unquote, there aren't really, but we'll get to that, isn't a reason to oppose more housing. Or life is not a series of excuses for you to find to oppose housing without feeling guilty about it. Mike, I'm tired. Where is this going? That's very fair. I'm also very tired. Where it's going is this. I'm not going to read through all these. There's some repeats here. There's snippets here. This is from DC Urban Moms, which no one should ever go to. And Nextdoor, which no one should ever go to. But you can see here, it's pipeline. Why can't YIMBYs stop saying drill baby drill for housing, which is, cute. We have enough in the pipeline. Mark Edwards says we have enough in the pipeline, right? You just see this a lot. People bring it up online. They bring it up in town halls. They have we have enough approvals where if developers just got off their butts and built what's already approved, we could do it. Okay. Where does this come from? I'm not here to tell you that this man is the original sin of all housing in Montgomery County. That is certainly not true. I'm, though lapsed, still Catholic enough to believe that that's, original sin in all of our hearts and that we're all subject to these issues. But a lot of it does come from County Executive Mark Elridge, who has never met an expert he doesn't think he knows better than. But he spends a lot of time saying, we have enough zone capacity in Silver Spring, ignoring that you'd have to knock down a lot of buildings, which he also doesn't like, to build, to zone capacity. Things like that, basically giving a lot of excuses to a lot of people to welcome people in theory, as long as it doesn't mean anything needs to happen to their neighborhood, right? Why is this wrong? Greater Washington article here gets into some of the main things. I'll link to these and you can look for more detail. The argument, he says, is basically, and a lot of people parrot, is that, we have a raw number of homes approved that is higher than the Metropolitan Washington Area Council of Governments housing targets, so we don't need to approve any more housing. As this article correctly points out, many of the homes in the pipeline may never get built. Some of them date back to the 80s. I think some of these, the developers are literally dead. Not all of these are getting built. And say all of them were still active, which they're not. Not everything gets built all the time. Financing can fall through. Plans can change. It's an early thing in the approval process to get a permit. It's not the end approval, and the county doesn't command things to be built just because it approves them. This also talks about how it's not even distributed. You have a lot in areas that, there's not as much demand to build housing now as there was when they were approved in 1985 or whatever, right? And then here's a little bit more detail of homes that are already approved to build may not be where we need them now, and it can take decades to build all those homes in pipeline, and because it takes time, you don't want everything to have to pan out immediately to meet our housing needs. Sidebar, these articles all come from my friend Dan Reed. They are the foremost, urbanist in Montgomery County, I'd say, and certainly no more than me. And more importantly, they are the owner of Goodest Boy Drizzy. This is largely an excuse to show this very cute picture of Drizzy, who I'll be dog sitting for soon again, and I love him very much. So what the fuck do you want me to do with this information, buddy? That is an even better question than the earlier one. This is another thing that Dan put together that shows, and I'll link to this too. This is a pretty good breakdown of the official Montgomery County Housing Atlas with unofficial, I'm going to guess you can tell which ones they are, labels that talk about, Farms Forever in the Ag Reserve, which, for better or worse, that's not changing. I stay out of that one. Yellow is houses, big yards up there. Houses, smaller yards is the darker yellow. And you can see that the brown and the red is basically where apartments can be, which is to say it's not many places. So I want you to stop and think about how, even if you think we have enough places to build, which I don't really agree with, are you limiting it to so many places that you're just entrenching exclusion, entrenching segregation, entrenching limited opportunity, and they all need to pan out in these very small areas, and it just may not work, right? I wrote this thing a little while back with this dope ass picture that kind of looks like a Mega Man game cover, which I'm a big fan of. I can't take any credit for that picture. Talking about why it's so hard and so important to embrace change. Gets a little personal. Talk about how I'm diagnosed on the spectrum, how I very much hate change myself, and that I spend a lot of time. It kind of close with this. We all fear change. We're all very good at using that fear to justify our own shit, basically, and how we don't need to change. And even when you know deep down the fear is irrational, it doesn't always stop that fear, but we can stop being held captive by it, right? And just saying at the end, I'm not asking people to not have concerns. I'm not asking people to stop, complaining to their neighbors or having some issues with it. I'm just asking people to stop being so sure that any change is going to be the end of the world for you, and to assume that the first excuse you hear for why something needs to be done isn't enough, and why maybe second guess that instinct. That's about it. Thank you.